He looks like he owns credit. Oh my gosh. Man like Arthur from Batman.
Namaste, Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour, hola, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Ken at 10, as usual, reporting to you live from Norbury, SW16, telling you all about what's going here in the local property market and beyond. How are you? Hope you're well. We're doing well here at JA, particularly because for the first time in a long time coming into work today, the temperature was in double digits. It was actually 11 degrees on the way in today. I was like, wow, that's fantastic. It's been so cold for so long, hasn't it? And I always think March, yes, you know, the sun's coming. And as the weather calms, so we start to find that more and more people come out the woodwork looking to buy, looking to rent, looking to sell their properties as well. Of course, this year is likely to be slower, and that's only natural with everything going on, isn't it? I want to come on to a few of those points as well. A lot of people are asking me, what if Labour got in? What would be the implications for landlords? Because landlords particularly are a bit scared. There's quite a lot going on under the Conservatives, let alone with a Labour government that's obviously traditionally more staunchly tenant pro. And so what would that mean for the average landlord? Well, landlords are scared already. So I think you'd see a big exodus in the sector for sure. But some of the new pledges from Labour are reducing eviction powers for landlords who have tenants in arrears. Now, this will be a real worry for landlords. The idea that it might be even more difficult to evict tenants on the grounds of rent arrears. It's not easy now, but it could be even more difficult under a Labour government. They're also talking about introducing 4-month notice periods up from the current 2 months, looking into a portable deposit scheme, which is what the current government are doing anyway. So that's neither here nor there, really. That's a soundbite. And then allowing tenants to make reasonable alterations to a property. Well, most landlords do that anyway, so I don't see that as a big problem. But when you put it all together, I see it as a little bit scary for the average landlord. So that remains to be seen what will happen there. But certainly, I think the net result will be more flight from landlords and therefore more pressure on the rented sector with an already undersupplied area. And I think what really needs to happen is that the government needs to recognise that landlords are an important part of the mix, particularly small landlords, because small landlords provide a huge amount of the accommodation in the UK and have a choice to pull out because it's a market like any other. And the more pressure you put on those landlords, the more likely they are to exit the sector, exacerbating an already undersupplied area. So rent over on that. SVB and Credit Suisse, something you may have heard of, and a lot of people are worried about these bank runs. Why are they happening? What relevance does it have to homeowners? Well, SVP, the reason that they ended up in a bank run was because some of their major clients, they're mostly tech companies, and they held huge amounts of money with them. The first in America, so it's an American bank, the first $250,000 is protected by the US government. So it just goes to show, for them to be pulling away from the bank, pulling their money out of the bank, they would have had to have funds in excess of that level for it to really matter. And what happened was that one of the major advisors and one of the venture capital funds that funds a lot of the tech projects and startups that actually used SVB advised them to pull away from that bank. And the problem that gave the bank was not that they were undercapitalized or underfunded. They put the deposits that they had because they had so much money from these new tech startups, especially since the pandemic. They've been absolutely booming, that they had too much money. So what do you do if you're a bank and you've got too much money? Well, of course, you need to buy something with it in order to obtain a return. And what they bought was one of the safest things in the world, US Treasury certificates. And these are actually more reliable than anything else, more reliable than banks, in fact, because the chance of the US government defaulting on its debt is almost nil. It's relatively very small. But the problem was this, not that they didn't have the money that was deposited with them, but they deposited a lot of that money on these long-term US Treasury certificates. And what that meant was when there was a run on the bank and everybody asked for their money, the money wasn't liquid. It wasn't available to them immediately. And therefore, that spooked other investors. And then the whole thing collapsed as the share price went down and more people demanded their money. The bank then had to realize these long-term certificates, which meant that you would get a penalty for withdrawing your money at that period, a bit like when you get a long-term investment that's for 3 years and all of a sudden you pull it out in 6 months, there's a financial penalty for that. And it's the same for the banks too. So that's why it collapsed. Credit Suisse, a little bit different there. But what we can say is that, you know, Credit Suisse and SVB, they've been taken over. Everything's, well, Credit Suisse has been capitalized, not taken over, I should say, by the Swiss government. And SVB has been taken over by HSBC. So could we see more? Yeah, possibly. You know, it'd be interesting to watch. What does it mean to the wider market? Well, what it might mean is that banks need to put some more security procedures in place to make sure that they don't have these runs, which could involve further capitalizing, which could involve the banks charging more to the end user, the customer. We always get it, don't we? The rub at the end of the day. And it could make them more hesitant towards lending, which could be a problem. But right now, the effect is very segregated and hasn't really impacted in terms of the mortgage market so far. And we don't suspect it will, but who knows? Stranger things have happened, haven't they? In terms of the market generally, still a lot of confidence out there. People are still buying. There's not a lot available. So what is available is getting interest if it's priced correctly. But the key thing here is having the price pitched correctly. I've said this many times. I know some of you will say, yeah, we've heard you say this before, Ken, but it's so critical. You know, everything sells at a price. If you think about it this way, if your property is on the market at £250,000 and it's struggling, imagine if it were on the market for £150,000. Well, they'd be queuing up at the door, wouldn't they? And if they're not at 250, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that at the right price, everything sells. And therefore, there's somewhere between that 150 and 250, which is the right price. And you need to find out where that sweet spot is in order to get the most in any given market. And in a tougher market, that figure is a little bit lower than it would have been a year ago. And you'd anticipate and expect that. But it does depend on what kind of property you've got. Garden flats are still in good demand, particularly, and 3-bedroom housing is in massive demand as well. So if you've got the right kind of property, there's not that much impact at all, really. If you've got the kind of property that isn't very much in vogue right now, then it could struggle a little. But I do expect, particularly with flats, quite an influx of flats coming to market this year. So I would say if you're thinking of selling this year and you've got a flat, then earlier rather than later would be my advice. Not financial advice, just a gut feeling. And apart from that, not so many valuations today. So we do have space, particularly for tomorrow. Got a couple of spaces tomorrow for valuations, and on Tuesday next week as well. So if you need advice on your property, you need a valuation, as always, give us a call. Thank you if you've already done so. And if you have any questions or queries relating to this or anything else we do, as always, do let me know. So look after yourselves and your families. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Ciao.